What's up, Pack? This is William again. Today, we're gonna cook a picanha. All right, if you've never had it before, it is a pretty fantastic piece of meat. They have a good fat cap on the backside. There is plenty of marbling. It's something that, you know, it's not gonna take as long as a brisket, but also it's a little bit more than a steak. So, start with cutting this bad boy open. There's a couple different methods of thinking with this. I like to just give it a quick rinse. Some people don't like rinsing, especially in their sink. They talk about, you know, foodborne illnesses, how this splashes everywhere, leaves stuff. I would much rather have a clean piece of meat than I would worry about, you know, whether or not I can clean my sink. So, get that. We got a minimum trim. Just taking this silver skin off. Nothing else. I'm not messing with my fat cap. This one does have a pretty large fat cap, and if you wanted, you could trim that down. Trimming it down does help if you're trying to render that and serve it. I know I've seen it several times, you know, in different cultures. What they'll do is they'll actually take these pieces and slice across it, fold it in on itself, skewer through it, and then cook it on an open flame. When you're doing that, you are going to get more of a render on the fat, as well as you're going to crisp it, which makes it taste better. We're not doing that. The reason why is we're not going to cook it that direction. We're going to run this in a pit. So because of that, we're not going to get that hard sear. That fat's not really going to render up enough to taste good. So I'm going to remove it afterwards anyway, but I want it there to protect my meat during the cook. So mainly just working on the silver skin. All right, if you look right here, you're going to notice we've got some silver skin in this area. We've got a little bit here. Then we've got this layer of silver skin that runs all the way across. If I start digging at this piece, I'm going to start separating these two muscles. Picanha has two different directions of grain. We're not trying to separate that out. What I want to do is get this low-hanging fruit out here and get that little bit out. That way, you know, I'm going to get a little more my seasoning is going to adhere better, and then I'm also not going to have that chewiness from that. So anytime you're trimming something like this, don't get carried away. Just get the stuff that makes sense, the stuff that doesn't, or if you're struggling with it, leave it. You can always take it off later when you're trimming before you eat. Let your blade do your work. Try not to tear your meat as you're coming across. A nice sharp knife makes all the difference in the world. Season both sides. Obviously, you know, I already told you we're not going to be removing this fat cap. Yes, when I cut it off after I'm going to serve it, I'm going to lose a lot of seasoning. Also, that fat rendering is going to have flavor to it. That is going to be in there with it. So I season both sides, whether I'm removing it later or not. So what we'll do is we'll grab a paper towel. We'll get a little bit of this excess moisture off of this, and then we'll hit it with our seasoning. All right, Pack, we're just going to dry this off. And all I'm trying to do is make it where my seasoning gets straight on there. I don't want excess of water, because as that starts to evaporate, it's going to remove my bark. So today we're using the Alpha Rub. Like we've said previously, you know, this is a very good rub for beef, any kind of larger cuts, stuff like that. So this is obviously a larger beef cut, so, you know, hence the usage here. We're going to give this bad boy a dusting like we always do. We're not getting carried away. We're just kind of making sure we have an even coverage. And like I said, you know, yes, we're taking the fat off, but also we want to treat the whole piece of meat the same. That includes your sides. You're gonna eat this, season it. So we'll get this side. Get that tip a little bit. Get down that edge. That, and like we said before, this is an all natural, no clumps, no anti-clumping agents at all, so you're gonna have to shake it up every now and then. It's part of having an all natural seasoning. And there we go. Now, like I said, picanha is pretty easy. Get it seasoned up, you know, miniature trim like that. Next thing you know, we're gonna go on the pit. All right, Pack. We're gonna teach you a little secret, so don't tell anyone. Cabbage. Usually when you think of cabbage, it's not really something that gets you excited. You're like, you know, coleslaw, sauerkraut. There's some cool things you can do with cabbage. One of them today is we're gonna add a little bit of butter. We're gonna add a little bit of better than bouillon. We're gonna top that off with some signature series, and it's gonna be delicious. So first thing we want to do is get this core out of here. I know people hit it on the counter, bust it loose, just cut it out. That's our preferred method. Please be careful with your fingers. You will need those. I like to do a little circle around, and then I get a little more angle. That way I can pull that center section. Now when it looks like this, obviously you can't put very much in there, so we're gonna have to take a little more of that out. Now some crossing action is usually the move. That way you're cutting back into what you've cut previously. And feel free to throw that in the floor. We don't need it. So, it's your kitchen, tear it up your way. Alright, be gone you. So, now we got a pretty good little cavity there. What we want to do is, I like to start with a little bit of seasoning. Alright, pro tip, these things are hard to get out of here, so just take it and it's yours, no one else has to know. So, give that bad boy a little bit of shaking there. Come behind that with some butter. Now, we're gonna go heavier than what you would think. The reason why is there's a lot of cabbage here. We're gonna be steaming this pretty much the whole time. So you need a good bit of butter to really penetrate down into this cabbage to kind of help it along. As much and as long as we're gonna cook this, it's gonna soften up a lot. Also, I mean, it's not like you're just eating this inside edge. You have this entire cabbage. When you're done, we're gonna cut this up. It's gonna disperse through there. Even though it seems like a lot of butter, your butter to cabbage ratio is not really gonna be that high. So, grab a spoon here. Let's get some better than bouillon in here. Now this is what's gonna give it that beefy flavor. This is what's gonna give it the color. So don't skimp on this either. I like to use the edge, wipe the spoon out a little bit there. And even though that seemed like a pretty hefty amount, we're gonna do it one more time. All right, top that off with a little more butter. And then we're gonna give that bad boy a little more of that sauce. All right, now we're gonna take aluminum foil, we're gonna make a plus sign, we're gonna wrap this thing up tight. Now just like, I don't know if you've watched our other video, if you haven't, you need to go check that out so you know what I'm talking about. Just like we did with our brisket, you know. So just like with our last video, you know, air pockets are the devil, so don't get none of them. So we got one, get a second piece here. Take this bad boy, wrap it up tight. Another thing is make sure your openings are up top. That way you know which side's up, because you'd be surprised once you wrap this thing up, especially if you don't go straight to your pit. You can very easily put this thing on upside down and lose all that juicy goodness that makes this recipe so good. Now the beauty of this is if you're cooking something like our picanha, it's going to take a little bit of time. You put this on the same time the picanha goes on there. This takes a while. You can cook this in the oven, you can cook this on a smoker, you can cook this in the grill. Anything that's going to give it heat, it's wrapped. It's not accepting outside, you know, flavors as far as smoke goes or something like that. So don't get carried away. I mean, if you don't have access to a pit, you can still do the same recipe. So yeah, fold that bad boy up, and then we'll get outside and get on the pit. All right, Pack, we are out here at the pit, fixing to fire this bad boy up. First we're gonna check, make sure pellets are in, distributed, good to go. Hit this bad boy with a little bit of power, and we're gonna cook a little hotter, a little faster today. just because it's a big chunk of meat. It's not really gonna care. With picanha, we're not taking this to a high temperature like you would brisket. We're not going to 195, 205, somewhere in there. Picanha, you want to serve medium rare. So, I mean, 140. You can cook it hot, you can cook it fast, you can cook it direct flame. It doesn't matter. You know, it's still going to be tender, it's still going to be delicious. Now, like I was telling you earlier, this can go on immediately. It doesn't matter if it's on during the warming process, doesn't matter. It's going to take as long as anything else. So just set that bad boy on there, let it roll. Our picanha we're going to put a little more effort into. We know that with the pellet smoker, our heat is coming up here, it is cruising across and then going out. So what we want to do, we want to make sure that fat cap is protecting the bottom. We're going to do it fat cap down. And we want our thicker section up here to be facing where our heat is. That way we'll get a little better airflow and it'll also keep this thing cooking at a little more even of a temperature. So I'm going to put that bad boy on there. Now we've got 2 of these, so I'm going to use 2 of them. Not that you have to, but it just works out better that way. And if you're like me and you're, you know, probes like to come apart, put them back together. Treat them right. So I'm going to slide that bad boy, 1 in this side. That's the thinner part, so I want to know where we're at our thinnest part. And then 1 right in the middle in the thickest part, because we're not done till that's done. We're going to close that down and yeah, we're going to forget about it. We'll come back out here randomly. My display has my 2 probes on the outside. So every now and then we'll come back, we'll take a look, we'll see where we're at. When we start approaching a medium rare, it's going to be time to pull it off. So we'll check back in when that's happening. All right, Pack. As you can tell, we're sitting at 143 on the main temp. I'm not sure what's going on here. Maybe it poked out the backside and it's reading a little bit of the ambient temperature. But either way, our picanha is done. So we got good color, we got good rendering. You can see the fat has already started to really render, drip out. So pull these bad boys out of here. You can see we charred it up a little bit, but nothing like if we were going to serve that. The other thing, when I'm checking this, I'm just going to kind of poke at it. You see how this side is digging in, that side not so much. We'll turn that around, let that roll while we finish up our sides. So we'll take this inside and let it rest, and then we'll get going on some mushrooms and onions. I'm going to show you a really good way to get that happen. Anytime we are using vegetables, we want to wash them, especially something that is covered in dirt. So what I like to do is get some cold water, just get it all over there real good, give that a little bit of a shake, and then dump out the rest. Just get the surface off of it. So lots of different ways of doing this. I don't like to leave the stems in there. That's just personal preference. All right, whenever I'm using mushrooms, I like to knock the stems off just to get more of an even shape to everything, and also it changes the flavor a little bit. So we're gonna knock this off and you're gonna get an awesome montage of me chopping. Alright, so like I was saying earlier, when your cabbage gets to the point you can poke it and stays there, That's good to go. So we pulled it off the pit. We're gonna let it sit here just a second to cool off. That way when I start processing it, it's not burning the daylights out of me. So in the meantime, we're gonna move on to making our next side, which is gonna be those mushrooms and onions. We're gonna start with a cast iron pan, because I mean, if it's good enough for grandma, it's good enough for us. All right, use it. So get a little heat in here. Next, we're gonna use some beef tallow. Now you can make your own tallow. I've done it several times. It turns out good. Or you can buy this and save yourself the effort and have better tallow. I don't care. That's up to you. But I like to use this. This is a good company. It's easy to find. You can get it off Amazon. You can get it pretty much anywhere. So we get enough of this. Good spoonful. We're going to start off with that. We may end up adding a little more, and I'll show you how to judge that. But that's enough to get, you know, our pan where we want it to be. That's enough to start off with the mushrooms. Now, most people are gonna start off with a little bit of onion, trying to get that translucent. Don't do that. Anytime you're cooking mushrooms, mushrooms have a lot of moisture in them. If you say you don't like mushrooms, what it is you don't like the water that comes out of mushrooms. It has a very, very strong flavor that's usually pretty bitter. I traditionally don't like the water that comes out of mushrooms as well. So most people that I've served this to that have told me they don't like mushrooms, I'm like, try it. If you don't like it, hey, that's cool. Normally they try it and they love it. So that's the trick. How do you tell when the moisture's out? I mean, obviously, if you look at that, that doesn't look very wet. When I put it in here, it's gonna double the liquid content that's in this. So we're gonna let this come up a little bit of temp. I mean, we're getting pretty close as it is, but and then what we're gonna do is toss these bad boys in there and then keep them moving around until you'll see they'll reduce in size, they'll change complete color, and you'll notice this pan will fill up with water and then it'll boil off. At that point, we'll know that it's time to add the onions. So in we go with the mushrooms. All right. Now all we're trying to do is move these around so we got even heat all the way across our mushrooms. And then we'll cut to a time lapse because this takes a little bit of time. So that way you guys can watch it happen without having to listen to me ramble. All right, Pack, we've got the color we're looking for. We've pretty much cone feed this, which is cooking it in fat. We are at that point. You see the size reduction, the color we were talking about. One thing that I wanted to address is we did not season this yet. There's a reason for that. That moisture I was talking about, our seasonings are dry. It will absorb some of that moisture, so it'll kind of hold that flavor we're trying to get rid of. So now the only thing in here, the moisture-wise, is the tallow we started with. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and add our onions on in. We're gonna put half of them down on the stove. That is like, you know, Pitmaster secrets right there. It's like throwing kiwis in your firebox. Like, really helps to have your flame seasoned. Anyway, so we have this going here. We're gonna add the star of the show, Big Bad Bark. So give that a good amount there. I'll toss this up. Now, if we need to re-season, we're gonna know pretty quickly. As you're stirring it around, you can see if everything stays pretty evenly coated, like it is right now, then there's no reason to add more. If you toss this a couple of times and you had spots that didn't look seasoned, then probably didn't catch enough the first time. So what we're gonna do at this point is we're gonna let this roll a minute. What I'm looking for is these onions to turn translucent. When they start to get that clearish color to them and start to reduce down the size as well, that's when I know, all right, it's time for the next step, which is I like to add a little bit of wine. Now, you don't have to use this wine. You don't have to use wine at all. I know some people, they don't use wine. That's fine. You know, you can add a little bit of extra seasoning, a little bit of extra beef tallow in there. You're going to get a similar result. So, you know, no reason to do something you wouldn't normally do just because that's what I do in my recipe. I'm gonna let this breathe a little bit because, you know, it's fine. Be sassy. But in the meantime, we're waiting on this anyway, so I gotta let this onion get a little less color. Let it get a, you know, a little more clear, and then we'll go in with that wine and rehydrate everything. Because as you can imagine, the longer this goes, the drier it gets. So about the time it's getting thirsty, we're gonna give it a sip of wine, and then it's gonna be fantastic. All right, Pack. We're starting to get, you know, that translucent color I was talking about. Also, if you notice on the bottom here, it's starting to stick a little bit. That means that this has gotten to that point where we've pulled enough moisture out of it that it's starting to absorb that beef tallow we put down there. So that's the time where I'll give her a little drink. Now we're not going to go crazy with this. I want enough in the bottom. Obviously you can see the steam, you can see the color. I'm getting a little bit of flavor. You know, it's going to cook off the alcohol, so I mean it is just flavor here. But it's also, you're going to notice, bring a really pretty color to these onions. I always use a red onion when it comes to this anyway. So once it absorbs up that wine, it gives it a beautiful, nice look, you know, crisp color. Good presentation on the plate. Now, I don't go right away. It's not done as soon as I do this. It's got to sit here and almost steam a little bit. Also, when you first add it, sometimes you need to add a little more seasoning. Not always, but you can kind of tell because it will, like I said, the seasoning is going to absorb in, it's going to add in. I look for the pepper. You know, that's going to be something that's not really going to just add to this juice and disappear. If you can see pepper, you're good to go. If you can't see any pepper, you might want to add a little bit more. As you notice, I mean, we can see some, but I could probably use a little bit. I mean, you know, big fat bark's delicious. Why not, right? So we'll give that a little extra dust in there. We're not going crazy. We're not trying to change the flavor profile. We spent all this time taking all this. So we want to just add to it. Build that layers of flavor that make it complex where people are like, man, what is that? And you're like, Wolfpack seasoning, of course. The best. Duh. Right now we got good color. We're getting a good cook. A couple of these onions, like that one right there, are not quite cooked to the point I want them yet. So I like everything to be nice and even. We'll let this roll for just a minute. If it starts getting hot, if it starts sticking to the bottom again, when I stir it, then I'm gonna add just a little more wine. And that's the balance you play. Just add just enough moisture to keep it from doing that, so you can bring it up to right at the temperature where you're ready. And then you're done. All right, Pack. We got this looking pretty good. We are thickening a little bit. I'm gonna add just a tiny splash, just enough to kind of get that bit off the bottom. But this is the flavor profile we are trying to achieve with the color and clarity that we're after. So we're gonna kill that heat, kind of spread it out a little bit, and then let that rest while we finish up cutting the cabbage. That's that yummy goodness right there. All right, so now it's time to cut this picanha. It's nice and rested. Giving it that time. You can tell we got this sweet juice pouring around. We're not getting rid of that. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take it, set it, cut it, put it back in this juice. That way anything that would normally dry out a little bit is going to just reabsorb that juice. All right, now picanha is kind of like the rest of them. You know, meats that are in this triangle shape, it has two different grain patterns. This section's coming that way, this section's heading that way. So we're gonna cut accordingly. Now I was talking earlier about that fat cap. It is flavorful. If you do not like a bunch of fat, you're gonna wanna trim that. You can do all kinds of stuff with that, but you can see, I mean, that is rendered and juicy. So we'll set that to the side a little bit. Now I'm not gonna cut all this fat off, but I am gonna kind of trim it down a little bit. I know there's people everywhere like, what are you doing? It's fine, we're doing slices. It's not getting wasted. All right, so now we're gonna cut. You can see, got a good smoke ring on that. Like I said, that's a large piece of fat. Some people don't want to eat that. My family is those people. If it was me, I would absolutely eat that. But trim it off, and it's still got plenty of flavor. You can see that's super juicy. So you're not missing anything. You can see these slices are right at the point where we wanted them. We got our good smoke ring. We got that meat's nice and done. You can see that glistening. And you can see that fat all over my glove. Fat is flavor. So that did its job. All right, if you compare that cut to this cut, you'll notice how we're starting to get a little different look up top. This is right, the last cut I'm gonna be able to do in that direction. We got enough of the other grain that we're gonna have to change. You can see how you got your cross pattern. That's what you're looking for. That makes it the most tender. And you see I'm going at this at an angle. It's because the grain pattern wasn't a complete 90 degree. It's kind of at a little bit of an angle, so you just want to make your cuts following along. You can see we got a good cook on that, good color. I mean, that is going to be absolutely delicious. All right, so you might ask, when I said I wasn't going to waste this fat, what can we do with that? There's a bunch of different ways of handling that. You can save it. You can add it to beans. You can add it to all kinds of different stuff where you're trying to add a little bit of beef flavor into something. It's great for green beans that have been canned, not store-bought, but the canned ones that don't have any kind of real, you know, added sugar or salts or anything like that. You can take those, boil it up with a little bit of that fat. That fat will get in the water, make it absolutely fantastic. If you're trying to make a broth, like any kind of like bone broth or beef broth, toss that in there with it, and that's really going to bring about that smoke flavor. I mean, those seasonings will, you know, really season up your broth a good bit. You can render that down into tallow and have a little bit of tallow that's got that same, you know, real deep beef flavor, as well as having that, you know, beautiful alpha rub profile as well. So I mean, there's several different things you can do. You can just throw it in the garbage can if you don't feel like messing with it and you don't want to use it. We try not to. We try to use as much as possible so there's a minimum amount of waste. But I mean, you know, I get it. Sometimes, you know, you don't have time for all that mess. So, you know, there are some suggestions, and we'll probably show some ways to handle some of this stuff in future videos. But I mean, that's got that taken care of. So I mean, now we're gonna plate. All right, Pack. We got this plated up. This is a good way. I mean, it's a good alternative. You can do this same cook style with any kind of steak. You just substitute filet, a ribeye, New York strip, sirloin, whatever. It works with everything. We use picanha because we got a pretty big pack here, so that way we get everybody fed. I had a couple questions last time as why I didn't try it myself. I'm on a 90-day transformation challenge, so I'm really on a strict diet, and during that I can't add in the extra intermuscular fat that you can't really compensate on a macro diet. But here at Wolfpack, it's not about me. It's about making good quality food, and it's about serving other people so that other people can enjoy the food and share in the fellowship. So I made this delicious plate, smelled all this, stared at it, all for you. You're welcome. We love you. We need you. Buy our stuff. But I'm gonna go serve this to my wife and family, and yeah, make something good. Share it with people, Just have a good time. Put your own flair on. All right, have a good one, Pack.